There are some discussions online, really about Bitcoin versus gold, and I think people need to differentiate between them really as investment options. First and foremost, Bitcoin is not an investment. Bitcoin is not a store of value or anything of that nature. Bitcoin is a speculative technology that really only makes where you'll only make a profit in if more people were to join in, much like a Ponzi scheme. That's not to say that Bitcoin is completely worthless. Bitcoin actually is a technology that is unlike any we've seen before, that makes it very easy to actually be in complete control of your assets in it without any central authority that's able to take them away from you, or that anyone that can transact on your behalf. You're the only one in Bitcoin that can transact, which means that there's no automatic payment or anything of that nature. There's no tax system that can withdraw your money out of your account. But Bitcoin in and of itself is a speculation that people are making. The price that you see attached to it is just speculation. Nobody knows what it will be worth in the long run. We're starting to see a trend. It looks like when it gets anywhere near $1,000, that's when a lot of people decide to sell and take profits. So there's reasons why you might want to consider being involved in Bitcoin, as understanding it as a future of payment technology, which it really is. It allows me and you in a third part of the world to transact without really anybody in between us, anyone to stop us, as long as we have an internet connection. When you think about sending the money from here to let's say India, you have to think about how many parties are really involved in that. The United States government is involved in that. The Federal Reserve is involved in that. The banks are both the receiving and the sending bank are involved in the transaction. There's so many hands inside that transaction, and with Bitcoin, none of that exists. The only middlemen are the miners who are mining these transactions and doing so. I think there's promise in the technology, but a better version of it may come out. Now we're seeing currency that's pegged to the dollar. So your digital currency is worth really $1, never more, never less. And that's a way for me and you to transact instantly in US dollars without taking on additional risk of holding the actual Bitcoin in itself. So there's better versions of an actual payment system, and what Bitcoin is going to be is solely determined on what people decide that it's going to be on, what price people are going to be willing to sell on. What's the lowest price people will sell it at before junking it. There's really no doubt that you know it makes life really a lot easier, and it can help a lot. This technology can really help a lot of people around the world. But being that it's technology, it can be copied and it can be reproduced in a better fashion. And I think that's ultimately what will come out of it. And not too many people will transact in Bitcoin itself. The reason why is it's simply too unstable. It can't be a currency with swings like 40% up in 1 month and 40% down in 2 days. That simply eliminates it from being a currency. A currency, that people are going to want, because this is not a currency that the government is forcing you to use and transact in. The Bitcoin is actually a currency that people will have to only adopt in the case that it is actually the best option out there for making transactions. Otherwise, it's just another option for making transactions, and nothing is there behind it to back it the way that you have with gold. The thing with gold and silver is that gold and silver have a historic value attached to them. For the last 2,000 years, gold's value has been relatively stable compared to anything else. So when people buy gold, what they're doing is just reserving their purchasing power. And you have to think about how many people that are in Bitcoin actually would remain in Bitcoin if all it did was preserve their purchasing power and not make them a ton of money. The people that are making a lot of money in Bitcoin are the ones that have been there from very early on, the early adopters. But now it's mature. Everybody who could possibly know about Bitcoin knows about Bitcoin. The growth rate is, not what people expected it to be. And it's because the price of the Bitcoin has been too unstable for the average person to even consider putting any money in. The people who are early adopters are the ones that, have the buy and hold kind of position on it. And it's simply unequal in the way that people that are getting in new are taking much more risk than people who have had it for a while. And ultimately you have to ask yourself if getting more people into this thing is, if they're going to want to take that gamble, if they're going to want to take a gamble, getting something to be from $1 to $7 is a lot easier than getting something from $700 to $7,000. So, I mean, to get the same percentage increase is easier when the thing is cheap and people think they can buy it cheap. And this thing is all psychological in many aspects. And the Bitcoin in general has many characteristics of a Ponzi scheme, and history may, look back on it and say that's all it really was in retrospect, was a digital age Ponzi scheme, because there was nothing backing the Bitcoin. And once the panic sells come, there's no limit on how much this thing can drop. I mean, when you look at the stock market and you look at bonds and things of that nature, the prices drop, but there's, an asset behind it that performs. Sometimes the asset fails, like in the case of a company that goes bankrupt. But the asset generally, even if you look back to 2008 when the market dropped 45%, that was actually a great time to buy, because the numbers were all off. If a business makes a certain amount of money a year and has for 30-40 years, there's very little chance that they're gonna go completely under. And if you look at the range of their price to earnings ratio of how much the company has been valued by investors in the past, what you'll actually find over there is something that could be purchased dirt cheap. But with Bitcoin, it's completely psychological and up to what people want it to be valued at. And we looked at my past videos and look at what just happened in Bitcoin over the last 2 months, and you see that it's highly manipulated, and it's very unlike gold. So those people that are coming on and saying, it's the digital version of gold, are doing a disservice, because it really is the complete opposite of gold. What gold is something physical, something that, the supply is really limited on our earth, unless you're talking about 20-30 years from now, if people are gonna send your robots out to space to mine precious metals on asteroids and things of that nature, like we see SpaceX is planning to do in the long term. That's the direction of privatizing kind of space, and privatizing profits coming from things in space. So if someone's able to build the technology to do that, and we're certainly getting closer and closer, that's going to become realistic. But aside from that, gold is sort of like Bitcoin in that the supply is not infinite, it's limited. Bitcoin is, you have the complete supply of Bitcoin, the number. It's not the case with gold. But if gold goes up in price, we see the mining activities begin to increase because there's more money to be made. So, but back to gold for a second. Gold is physical. It's something that, the fact that you own all of it and it can't be taken away from you, that's something that makes Bitcoin like gold. But gold can be stolen from you, and your Bitcoin can be stolen from you. There are still ways that people can get it from you. There's never anything that's a sure thing. So if you're going to look over generations, gold has been a way to keep your money safe. It's one of the most conservative ways. Regardless of what the price is doing today, you have to look at it over the long run. You can't look at it as today. And the thing with Bitcoin is, what's going on with gold is people have 500 ounces of gold. From today to tomorrow would make the same amount as somebody who purchased 500 ounces of gold today. With Bitcoin, it's different in that the people who have this from really early on, you know, they're covered. It's not going to go back down there for a really long time, back to when it was $1 or $10 or whatnot. And because those people have seen so much growth, they're able to hold for such long periods of time. And those people are, you know, are really the people that are in the best position. But those that bought at 4, 5, 6, 800, those people that bought Bitcoin at those price are just gambling, really. And that's all Bitcoin is. It's a gamble. It's not an investment. It's very different than gold. You need to understand that the two things are too much unlike each other. You shouldn't equate one to the next, because your Bitcoin tomorrow could be worthless, but that's not true of your gold. It never has been. Gold is historic. It has a history behind it, so we know its historical value and the context of it. We don't know anything about that in terms of Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is not like gold, because any copy of gold can be detected and is not worth anything. It's fake. Bitcoin can be copied, and another, you know, predecessor to Bitcoin could do the same thing better. Transaction times with Bitcoin are very slow. So right now you can't even go into a store and buy a cup of coffee with Bitcoin, which makes it actual not so great payment method for local transactions. It's only good for foreign remittance, and with then it's very risky to hold. So someone that wanted to buy, send their mother $300 in Mexico, let's say, using Bitcoin, could have sent it on Friday, and then on Sunday the $300 is worth $200. That's the situation that you need to understand that a lot of people are in, and that's the only thing that would make Bitcoin grow and be adopted by more people. The mentality now that's going on is that Bitcoin needs to be adopted by more people, by pumping the price up, so people will rush in as a gamble to see if they can make money in it. And that failed just now. We've seen that fail. They did that in China. It didn't work. The price is right back down to $800. It could even go lower from here. There's just so many things that could go wrong with it, and that's not the case with physical gold. When you have gold, you have gold. Nobody can copy it. Nobody can make your gold worth half tomorrow. There is manipulation of paper gold, but we're not talking about paper gold. We're talking about physical gold, real gold. Paper gold is just a piece of paper that says you own this here and there. It's not real. It's not. You can't touch the gold. You can't feel it. You can't weigh it. So, and you need to understand also, Bitcoin is dependent on a lot. In order for Bitcoin to work, society has to be functioning. There needs to be internet, there needs to be power, there needs to be heating and air conditioning services. If you see like people think that Bitcoin will be great in the case of chaos, but in the case of chaos, Bitcoin is not going to help you. Bitcoin only works if the underlying society is functioning in a way where these goods and services are accessible to the public. Look at places like Africa. You're saying to yourself, these people can't access bank but with a mobile phone. But you're not thinking, if these people in Africa don't have a bank to use, what are the odds that they're going to get mobile phone service? I mean, it's crazy, you know? Some people can get it down there, but it's not everybody. And the ones that are completely impoverished, a cell phone costs a lot of money in those type of countries. The service costs a lot of money. The internet costs a lot of money. You take those things for granted because you live in a developed nation where these things in your lifetime have never been at risk. You've never risked not being without electric. You've never risked not being without steam. But these companies will not go out of business, these electrical companies and these gas companies, unless there's real chaos that ensues. And if that's the case, you're not going to be using Bitcoin if you can't charge your cell phone. So the two are very different from each other, and if you're comparing one to the next, you need to know that there's no either or here. These are two very different things. One is a digital asset, and the other one is in case you don't have access to digital assets, a real asset. It's like land. Physical land is the same thing like gold. You buy it to preserve its value over the long term, even if the price tomorrow goes up or down. So make sure you understand the differences, and you don't just think that, well, gold and Bitcoin, if one goes up, the other will go up. If one goes down, the other will go down. It's the digital version of gold. It's not true. It's the digital version of Bitcoin. It's not the digital version of gold.